When you start to realize you've been living someone else's life, it hits you like a quiet storm. Not loud, but undeniable. You wake up one day and nothing fits. Not your job, not your relationships, not even the way you talk to yourself. It's like you've been cast in a play you never auditioned for, and the script was written by everyone but you. You followed the rules, did what was expected, made yourself small to keep the peace, laughed when you didn't feel joy, stayed when your soul screamed to leave. And every time you said yes when you meant no, a piece of you slipped further away. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow erosion. But one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the eyes staring back. Not because you've changed, but because you were never allowed to be you. And maybe that's when the grief begins. Not just for what you lost, but for what you never gave yourself the chance to become. And the question that begins to whisper is simple. What if I started over? What if I made this life mine? They said you should be grateful. So you smiled. They said don't make a fuss. So you stayed quiet. They said this is just how life is. So you shrank yourself to fit it. But inside, a part of you always knew. This isn't it. This isn't living. It's performing. It's surviving. It's wearing masks so long that even your own reflection feels like a stranger. The truth? You were never meant to be what others expected. You were meant to be you, unfiltered, unapologetic. But no one taught you how. Instead, you learned to please, to adapt, to be whatever kept the peace. But peace bought with self-betrayal isn't peace. It's silent agony. And when you start to listen, really listen, you'll hear your inner voice again. Faint, but fierce. It says, you don't have to live like this. You never did. The moment you hear that voice is the moment your healing begins. Not loud, but real. Like the first crack of dawn after a sleepless night. It starts small. You say no when you usually say yes. You take 5 seconds before replying. You cancel a plan that drains you. And suddenly, the ground shifts. People notice. Some pull away. Some push harder. You begin to see it clearly now. How much of your life has been borrowed. Borrowed dreams. Borrowed identities. Borrowed timelines that never fit your soul. You weren't just living someone else's life. You were abandoning your own. And now it's awkward, uncomfortable. People get offended when you stop performing the role they cast you in. They say you've changed. They say you're distant. But the truth is, you're finally close to yourself. The silence you're creating is not emptiness. It's space for truth, for self, for sovereignty. This is the detox, the withdrawal from approval, from pretending, from molding yourself just to be liked. And it's hard. God, it's hard. But so is dying a slow death inside at every time you betray your soul. This is what coming back to life feels like. Unsteady, but undeniable. And it starts with just one sacred no. At first, they'll make it about them. Why are you being like this? You've changed. You're being selfish. But don't get confused. This isn't about you hurting anyone. This is about you no longer being convenient. Because when you stop living someone else's life, you stop feeding their comfort. And they feel it, not as your truth, but as their loss of control. Carl Jung once said, "The persona is a mask, a role we play to survive. But when you remove that mask, You no longer fit into the version of you they built in their minds. You start to disappoint, to unsettle, to become unpredictable. And that's when the guilt trips come, the manipulation, the fear tactics. But remember, this discomfort is not your burden. It's proof that the script is breaking. You're not here to keep playing a role. You're here to write your own damn story, even if it means being the villain in someone else's tale. And if this resonates with your heart, pause here, subscribe to the channel, and type "I choose my truth" in the comments. Because the journey back to yourself starts with a single act of rebellion. You can love people and still walk away. You can care deeply and still choose distance. You can have history and still outgrow it. Because love doesn't mean self-erasure. Compassion doesn't mean compliance. If staying costs your voice, your joy, your truth, it's too expensive. And you've paid that price long enough. There's a quiet violence in self-abandonment. You smile, but it's hollow. You give, but feel empty. You stay, but slowly disappear. And you know what hurts most? No one notices. No one claps for your sacrifice. Because people get used to the version of you that serves them. And the longer you keep showing up for others while ghosting yourself, the deeper the ache becomes. But here's the shift. You start showing up for you. You reclaim your mornings. You speak up when something feels off. You stop explaining every decision. You stop apologizing for needing space. This isn't selfishness. This is sanity. This is sovereignty. Because at the end of the day, you live with yourself, not with their expectations, not with their approval, just you. And that has to be enough. But why is it so hard to break free? Because you were trained to please, rewarded for disappearing, told you were good when you stayed small, quiet, agreeable. So every time you try to expand, you feel guilt, shame, fear. This is not weakness. This is programming. And programming takes time to unlearn. Carl Jung spoke of psychic energy, that every act, every thought, every reaction costs something. And if you keep spending your energy being who others want you to be, you'll go bankrupt on the inside. That's why your body feels heavy, why your mind feels foggy, why joy feels far away. It's not because something's wrong with you. It's because you've been running on empty. So what now? Start small. One pause before you say yes. One honest answer instead of the polite lie. One moment of silence instead of over-explaining. Every act of alignment restores a little more of you. And one day, you'll look back and realize you didn't lose anyone. You found yourself. They trained you to react, praise when you smiled, punishment when you spoke up. So now, even silence feels dangerous. You're not overreacting. You were conditioned. Every button they push, it was installed in childhood, and the world keeps pressing them. So when someone raises their voice, you shrink. When someone withdraws love, you chase. When someone disapproves, you contort yourself into something more palatable. But here's the truth. You are not broken. You are reacting to an old system that's dying. Carl Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You thought this pain was fate, but it's just programming. And the moment you pause, breathe, and choose differently, you rewrite the code. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not every time, But every conscious choice is a rebellion. When you stop reacting and start responding, from awareness, from power, you take your life back. Not all at once, but breath by breath, boundary by boundary, truth by truth. You don't owe anyone the old version of you. Let her rest. Let him go. You're becoming someone new now. You want peace? Then stop feeding the noise. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every question deserves your energy. Not every silence has to be filled. There's power in pulling back, in choosing stillness, in letting others sit with their own discomfort, without making it your job to fix it. You used to think silence was punishment, that not explaining yourself was cruel, that withdrawing was cold. But now you understand. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is stop rescuing people from their own growth. Carl Jung spoke of psychic containment, the ability to hold your own energy without leaking, without scattering, without trying to save everyone. You are not a sponge for the world's emotions. You are not a fixer, a buffer, a savior. You are a soul with boundaries. And boundaries are not walls. They are doors. And you get to choose who walks through. So the next time guilt knocks, pause, breathe, ask, is this mine to carry? Because when you stop over-explaining, stop over-giving, stop over-functioning, you begin to finally rest. And in that rest, you start to hear yourself again. It's not them. It's your trigger, the tight chest, the racing thoughts, the desperate urge to make things right. Those are yours. But they don't define you. They reveal you. The places you flinch the fastest are the wounds still bleeding underneath. And people, knowingly or not, poke them. Not to hurt you, but because your reaction keeps them in control. So what if you stopped reacting? What if you held the emotion, breathed into it, and simply didn't respond? Not to punish, not to manipulate, but to reclaim your center. Carl Jung called this breaking the projection, because when you no longer play the role they cast you in, their illusions crumble. And when they do, they might rage, they might guilt trip, they might beg for the old you. Let them, because you're not here to protect their story anymore. You're here to write your own. And that means no more explaining your no, no more softening your truth, no more sacrificing your peace to avoid discomfort. If it costs your soul, it's too damn expensive. They'll say you've become distant. They'll miss the version of you who answered every call, fixed every mess, absorbed every storm. But that version of you was tired. That version was bleeding beneath the smile. That version kept everyone afloat while drowning silently. So no, you're not distant. You're just no longer available for emotional codependency. You're no longer signing up for one-sided loyalty, conditional love, and relationships built on obligation. That's not cold. That's clarity. The ones who only loved the helpful version of you, they will leave. Let them, because your healing will offend those who benefited from your pain. You don't need to keep explaining. They heard you. They just preferred the version that served them. Carl Jung reminds us, what you tolerate externally reflects what you accept internally. And now, you've raised your standard. You want reciprocity. You want peace. You want truth. That's not too much to ask. That's the bare minimum. And those who can't meet you there, They were never really with you. They were with the mask. And now, you've taken it off. They won't understand, and they're not supposed to. Because the path back to yourself is not a public performance. It's sacred, private, messy. There will be days when you second-guess everything. When you wonder if you're being too harsh, too selfish, too much. But growth always looks like rebellion to those invested in your compliance. You were not born to be digestible. You were not born to shrink. You are here to become whole. And wholeness isn't always likable. Jung said we don't become enlightened by imagining light, but by bringing darkness to consciousness. And that means facing the hard truths. You abandoned yourself for love. You silenced your needs to be accepted. You made pain normal just to feel included. But not anymore. You're not waiting for permission. You're not shrinking to fit their comfort. You're expanding into discomfort, into sovereignty, into truth. And yes, it's lonely. But loneliness in truth is still better than belonging through betrayal. So let it feel heavy. Let it feel strange. This is not the end. It's your emergence. You're not angry. You're just finally awake. You see the patterns, the emotional debt, the unspoken contracts you never agreed to, the one where you're always the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who makes it okay for everyone else, while slowly disappearing yourself. And now, you're breaking those contracts, not out of resentment, but out of reverence for your own soul. You don't need to be the strong one all the time. You don't need to be the understanding one forever. You don't need to explain your boundaries to those who trample them. Carl Jung would say, wholeness requires integration, and integration means facing the parts of you that screamed while you stayed silent. The truth is, you were never weak. You were accommodating. And now that you've stopped, people confuse your peace for arrogance. Let them. Let them sit with the silence you once filled with your labor. Let them wonder where you went, while you finally return to yourself. You're not selfish. You're sacred. And sacred things are never up for negotiation. And when the silence settles, you'll realize what you feared was never silence. It was clarity. Without the noise, you hear the grief. The grief of all the times you abandoned yourself to be loved. You start to see how often you chose peace externally while starting wars within. How many times you said yes with a shaking voice and a breaking heart. But this grief, it's holy. It's not here to punish you. It's here to cleanse you. Because grief is love with nowhere to go. And now, you're finally letting that love return home to you. You mourn the girl who smiled when she wanted to scream, the boy who held back tears to be strong, the adult who stayed silent because speaking truth felt dangerous. You mourn them, and then you bless them because they kept you alive. But they don't have to lead anymore. Carl Jung said, "You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become." And now, you choose to become whole. Not perfect, not painless, just whole. And that changes everything. And slowly, something shifts. You wake up and feel your breath again. You walk slower, speak softer, listen inwardly. Not because you're afraid, but because for the first time, you're not rushing to prove yourself. You no longer need everyone to understand. You no longer chase closure from people who never gave you honesty. You no longer explain your healing to those invested in your hurt. It's not about revenge. It's not about punishment. It's about peace. And peace doesn't beg. Peace doesn't perform. Peace just is. You start to see people clearly, who respects your space and who resents your boundaries, who claps for your evolution and who mourns the version they could control. Carl Jung called this individuation, the becoming of your true self through separation from the collective. It's lonely, yes, but it's honest. And that honesty, it's worth everything. You'll lose people, but you'll find presence. You'll lose comfort, but gain clarity. And slowly, your life becomes lighter. Not because it's easier, but because it's finally yours. But now comes the discipline. It's one thing to awaken, another to live awake. You've seen the truth, but can you embody it? Can you stay silent when guilt knocks? Can you hold the line when people push the old buttons? Can you breathe through the discomfort of no longer being everyone's version of good? This is the real work. The sacred discipline of choosing yourself again and again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You won't always get it right. You'll relapse into old patterns. You'll feel the urge to people please, to explain, to fix. But now, you'll catch it. And every time you pause, every time you hold instead of react, you reclaim another inch of your power. Carl Jung warned, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that privilege? It's earned in stillness, in resistance, in radical honesty. You're not becoming someone new. You're remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And that is your revolution. Now you understand. You owe no one a version of you that costs your peace. You don't have to answer every message. You don't have to explain your no. You don't have to carry guilt for prioritizing your own oxygen. The people who guilt trip you for healing, they were never holding your heart, just your patterns. And the moment you stopped performing, they panicked. Not because they lost you, but because they lost access to the you that abandoned yourself. Let them go. You are no longer available for emotional crumbs, for relationships built on need, not mutuality, for conversations that drain instead of nourish. And here's the truth most won't say. Peace will cost you comfort, but chaos costs your soul. You get to choose now. Carl Jung believed that real freedom comes not from fitting in, but from standing alone, rooted in truth. And the more you stand in that truth, the more silent your world becomes. Not empty, just filtered. Because your peace has become too expensive for the cheap drama of the past. You're not lonely, you're refined. And from here, everything changes. But be ready. Not everyone will celebrate this version of you. Some will say you've changed. Some will say you're cold. Some will try to provoke the old reactions just to prove you haven't grown. Let them. Growth threatens those who benefit from your suppression. They won't say it out loud, but your boundaries scare them. Your clarity disrupts their patterns. Your peace exposes their chaos. So they'll test you, mock you, try to guilt you back into the version of you that served them. But you've been to the edge now, and you know what's there. Nothing but silence and the sound of your real self rising. Carl Jung taught that every confrontation with the shadow is a rite of passage. And this is your right. You're not abandoning them. You're refusing to abandon yourself again. So when the tests come, and they will, smile gently, walk away slowly, and protect your new frequency. Because anyone who sees your healing as a threat was never rooting for your wholeness to begin with. And here it is, the part no one prepares you for. The silence after the storm, the space after the release, the hollow ache where identity used to be. You've untangled yourself from so much. Roles, masks, patterns. Now what? Now, you learn to just be. Not to please, not to impress, not to perform. Just be. It feels awkward at first, boring even, because drama was a distraction. Noise was a substitute for meaning. But in the stillness, you begin to hear something new. A quieter voice, not desperate, not loud, but true. It says, "This is who you've always been." And suddenly, you're not rushing anymore. You're not chasing. You're not explaining. You're just breathing, existing, becoming. Carl Jung believed that only in solitude can we meet the self. Not the mask, not the wounded child, but the essence. And now, you're meeting yours. Slowly, tenderly, one breath at a time. And then one day, you wake up differently. Not lighter, but clearer. Not louder, but more rooted. You make your coffee slowly. You open your phone with intention. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You start living as if your time matters. Your energy matters. Your yes becomes sacred. Your no becomes effortless. Not out of defiance, but out of alignment. You're not cutting people off. You're cutting yourself free. From guilt, from roles, from the need to be understood by everyone. Some won't get it. That's okay. You're no longer building a life that needs universal approval. You're building something smaller, quieter, truer. Carl Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. And now, you understand what that means. You're not just surviving. You're not just coping. You're living, rooted in truth, bathed in presence, alive in your own skin. And for the first time, you're not afraid to be misunderstood, because finally, you understand yourself. This is what it feels like to come home. Not to a place, but to yourself. You're no longer waiting for someone to save you. No longer chasing people who confuse your worth with your usefulness. You're no longer shrinking, twisting, explaining. You're standing, still, whole. You've outgrown the stories that kept you small. You've buried the masks that once kept you safe. You've remembered that love without freedom is just possession in disguise. So now, you love yourself enough to walk away from anything that asks you to betray your soul. And what's left? Quiet joy, deep breath, true connection. Not many people, but the right ones. Not loud success, but real peace. Not perfection, but presence. Because you finally understand, you were never lost. You were never broken. You were just buried beneath all the noise. And now, you've returned to your voice, to your rhythm, to your life. And you're not going back. Not ever again. If this message found you in a moment of quiet searching, or reminded you of the power waiting beneath your pain, you're not alone. You're part of a quiet revolution, a generation of souls choosing truth over performance, presence over perfection, peace over approval. So if this story resonated with something inside you, take a moment, like this video. Share it with someone still living in someone else's script. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Because here, we're not just healing. We're remembering who we were before the world told us who to be. One truth at a time, one story at a time. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, stay lost. Stay becoming.